You might recognize Mark Ruffalo by some of his most iconic roles in film and television. Some of them even include people like lawyers and investigative reporters fighting for a better world. But in real life, he spent more than a decade fighting for a clean energy future. He's the co-founder of the Solutions Project, pushing for 100% renewable energy and backing communities most impacted by climate change. Gloria Walton is the president and CEO of the Solutions Project, leading a team that supports more than 350 grassroots organizations across 45 states. Now, I come from the climbing world, but we each came to the same conclusion, that we needed to step up for the climate. In this episode, you'll hear something different, an actor and a climber comparing notes on why we each fight for clean energy and what keeps us going. And you'll hear from Gloria, who's helping frontline leaders turn local solutions into a national shift. I'm Alex Honnold, professional climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries.
I'm Gloria Walton, CEO and president of the Solutions Project, and we're a national nonprofit organization that resources communities on the front lines of the climate crisis, and we help to amplify their solutions and their stories.
I'm Mark Ruffalo. I'm one of the original co-founders of Solutions Project, and I'm an actor and a climate activist, environmental activist. I came from those communities that were fighting on the front lines and realized through Gloria's leadership that that was where we wanted the Solutions Project to go.
It's important to center those on the front lines and the communities that are most impacted, that we all have a role to play when it comes to solving the climate crisis. We're living in a world where the people who need the resources the most aren't getting it. And I think that it's important for each of us to help change that story and to make sure that we are actually investing in those that are most impacted so that they can transform and create a future that uplifts all of us.
One of the biggest lessons for me was understanding just how much power we actually have as a group. It isn't just rely on any one of us. And we've already made huge strides. We can't forget that. We've made a renewable energy revolution that's happening throughout the world. And it's because that we all came together with this common goal.
I think about a lot of community organizations that we support across this country. And since we're in New York, I guess I'll kind of give a shout out to Uprose in Sunset Park. And essentially they took what was an industrial waterfront site and they transformed it and are transforming it into offshore wind turbines. And this is going to be powering the city, but also creating jobs for the city. It's a way to show that you can center communities, but also just get out the way and let communities lead.
Look, if you look at Baltimore right now, how important it is that there's a community-centered mindset. Well, all those people learn how solar works, how to be solar installers. They had safety because the lights create safety at night. And now they're building places for young people to go, just like they're doing in Baltimore, which made the crime rates drop. I mean, what you keep seeing over and over again is how these things actually ripple out in compounding positive ways.
We're basically saying that when we have solutions, when we have new developments in our communities, if we have the people who are most impacted at the table, when we have community at the table, we can figure out how to have these new innovations in ways that uplift all of us and doesn't harm some of us.
My activism has basically moved more and more into storytelling. And I wanted to see how can I take my activism and actually reach people through what I do as an actor. And that's when the story came to me about Forever Chemicals and the movie Dark Waters. And then the biggest health study that came out of the work of Rob Bilott, the lawyer that I play. It's basically a thriller. It's an investigative thriller. And that film has done more to change the laws throughout the world based on Forever Chemicals than anything else. There's a case study on it. That's our whole ethos here at the Solutions Project is telling these stories of people and resourcing them, just like that movie did.
Mark, Gloria, thanks for being on Planet Visionaries. Well, so you're certainly more well known for your Hollywood roles. How did
I'm an actor
fractivism fit
too.
into that?
Yeah. I forgot that
Occasionally,
part.
yeah, sometimes you act on the side.
Yeah.
But so, how did that lead to becoming a fractivist, and then in turn the Solutions Project?
I was raised basically on the edge of a forest, and I spent all of my time as a kid in the forest, and it was just so informative to me. And so I wanted my kids to have that. We were living in LA, and so we decided to move to upstate New York, and we moved right into the middle of the gas lands. I mean, it was right the ground zero of the fracking build out in the United States. Literally, 3 weeks later, I was on Rachel Maddow talking about fracking and introducing it to the world.
That's one way to help.
Yeah. But out of that came this idea, like, we need to transition to renewable energy. We need the energy. How are we going to do it without it? And that brought me to climate scientist Mark Jacobson from Stanford, who was building out renewable energy plans for the world. But we couldn't have renewable energy unless it was just. To make this transition to include all people, because historically, there were groups of people, marginalized groups of people who have been left out of these transitions. And that's where Gloria and I met. Really, was essentially making sure that this transition would be a just one.
So how did you guys meet?
Yeah, so I actually used to run an organization called Scope in South Central. My entree point into this
South
work,
Central LA?
Yeah, in South Central LA. Thank you.
Yeah.
I identify as an organizer, even still. And so I was in the trenches with everyday people talking about the issues. And at Scope, we were actually an economic justice organization. I started there as an intern, and eventually, within 6 years, became the CEO and president of that organization. And it was under my leadership that I transformed that organization into one of the premier climate justice organizations in this country. And essentially, because we were economic justice, I was researching, our team, we were researching what was the next big growth sector. And at that time, we saw that it was going to be climate, and that trillions of dollars, this was like back in like the early 2000s. And we saw that trillions of dollars was going to be invested in climate. And we thought that this was an opportunity for Black and brown families to have access to good paying jobs, unionized jobs. And we just knew it was like the sector of the future. And that's when I became an inaugural grantee of the Solutions Project.
Oh, classic.
So, yeah. And
was that actually the beginning of the Solutions Project? Was that actually inaugural grantee?
Well,
or like one of the first?
So first it was kind of like all the science, that was happening. And eventually they decided to—
started giving grants?
Yeah, give grants. And they picked some grassroots organizations across the country, and I was one of them.
And so they funded your organization, then you took them over from the inside. That's cool.
Well, that
was kind of the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
We were like, what are we doing? And I came from the front lines. I was a frontline organizer for fracking. I mean, that's really where I came from. So I knew it was a different kind of community, but it was still these marginalized working poor people who were being left behind, who the state government was literally sacrificing towards for this
for energy.
Yeah, for energy.
Yep.
And so I that's where I related to. I was at those marches. I was on the ground. I was in those fights. Those are the people I related to. So the idea that the Solutions Project would transition and start to have those people who are already leading the world, the frontline communities are always leading. Have someone actually come in and take a leadership position in this organization was by design, and she was this bright star that was just it was irrefutable,
And so
and it
Gloria,
was a process.
Yeah, it was definitely a process. It was right.
Yeah, coming from South LA, it's a community that's surrounded by freeways from the north, south, east, and west. And so in addition to thinking about jobs, we were also thinking about public health. And, in LA, there's like one of the largest ports in the country, global port, and diesel trucks were also going around our community. So we had some of the poorest air quality. It's like a food desert, a highly concretized area, so minimal trees and shade.
Yeah, like the LA River, which is just
right. Oh my God, that's dried up.
Yeah, it's like a sad canal thing.
Exactly.
It's just pure
It's
concrete.
a trickle.
Exactly.
Of pure concrete.
Yes. Yeah. And people living across the street from like oil drilling and fracking, right? Or going to school adjacent to these areas. And so when we started to understand climate, first through the economy, we really started to see that this is like about our public health. This is about transportation. This is about water quality and air quality. This is about the food that we eat, right? This is about our lives. This is about people and the myriad of places that we call home. And ever since then, I couldn't turn back. So being a part of TSP, when I was an inaugural grantee, I was eventually recruited by Mark and others to be a board member and served on the board for 3.5 years. And was recruited to be, the CEO and president.
Right,
yes.
Cool.
Really just kind of sharing a perspective that comes from the front lines, where it's really important to center communities, because I think all too often there's a lot of solutions, but what ends up happening is that these solutions don't have the people that are most impacted at the table. And so a lot of intended sometimes, but often unintended harm ends up happening. And that can be mitigated when you have the people that are most impacted at the table helping to shape these solutions.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys totally know. I mean, Mark, I don't think you know, but I started the Honnold Foundation 13 years ago as well. And we also are centered around community-led solar projects work as much abroad as we do in the U.S., though we share many of the same grantees and partners in the U.S.
Yeah,
or several of the same.
Yeah, I was just getting that. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting that we both sort of independently arrived at the same.
We've been on this parallel track and we're meeting now. Yeah,
it's interesting. And so maybe talk a little more about why you center community. Obviously I agree, because that's what we're doing at the Honnold Foundation as well. But I think it's not an obvious connection, maybe for a listener to understand. One, how radically different that is in an approach than sort of conventional philanthropy, maybe, and also why that's important.
I'm going to let you pick that up.
I guess first I'll start with this word philanthropy, right? Like many people know the word philanthropy, and when we think of philanthropists, we think of kind of white male billionaires who gives their money away just for charitable purposes. And that's a start, right? But the actual word of philanthropy means for the love of humanity. And that's partly why I decided to transition into this space. And my experience when I was running a regional grassroots organization was that philanthropy wasn't feeling so loving, And so it was like, how can we...
What do you mean?
I think that when you're running organizations, you're always fundraising. I'm a fundraiser. I'm always fundraising for the Solutions Project, right? And it's like you're often on the grind. And the reality is that philanthropy is actually quite capricious and fickle and kind of changes with the winds. And the kind of change that we're trying to create actually takes time, right? It's transformational, it's systemic, it's holistic. And sometimes you'll have some overnight wins, but those big wins actually take some time.
Yeah,
and so you need that
worth
partnership.
Doing takes some effort, for sure.
Yeah,
exactly. And philanthropy doesn't always say, hey, I'm going to be in this with you for the long run. And that's actually part of what we want to make sure that we're doing at the Solutions Project, where it's we're not saying that we have the big plan, figure out how to match with us. We're saying, hey, we have some resources. We trust you to self-determine how best to use those resources. And we're here to support. And we understand that this work is hard. And so we want you to see us as a resource and a partner and a thought partner and someone who's here to support you. And that is putting a little bit more love in philanthropy. And that's something that's appreciated and valuable, right? Appreciated from our partners.
Yeah, it's funny. That's literally everything I say about the work at the Honnold Foundation. I'm like, I just want to start clapping. I'm like,
yeah,
that's exactly.
But it's radical. I mean, it is radical.
Yeah.
It's not a common. It isn't a common way of looking at it within the philanthropic world. It's
well, actually, it's funny because I'm saying, yeah, of course I agree with you, but then I'm like, actually, I don't totally know that, because I also approach quote unquote philanthropy from a sort of unconventional. I don't know anything about philanthropy. I just started donating money to things that I thought were important, and then the Honnold Foundation has grown over time. As my sort of profile has grown, we've been able to raise more and give more, and it's incredible to see the impact. But it's not like I know anything about traditional philanthropy, but I think in some ways that's a better approach for it.
100%.
Because you just come into it with a clear slate where you're just like, well, these are the people doing the work. This is the work that matters. We give them the money to do it, and then they do it. You're sort of like, shouldn't it be that simple?
That's philanthropy.
Yeah, exactly.
But
at its base.
Exactly.
In its most purest
Yes.
form. Like it comes from your heart. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at the Honor Foundation, we sort of say, and also half joking, but it is basically true that, trust-based philanthropy, a lot of our feelings around philanthropy come from like the way we work with our partners comes from the climbing world, where you only climb with people you trust, and then you trust them with your life. And
Exactly.
so with philanthropy, it's sort of like, we only partner with organizations that we trust, and then we give them unrestricted grants to do what they think is right.
That's
It's
right.
like basically you trust them completely to do the thing that they're going to do,
That's
and then
right.
let them execute.
And they know best. They're the experts.
That's exactly.
They're fighting for their lives. I mean, that's what we see.
Yeah,
is that they're already
that's-
fighting for their lives. You know, they'll stretch a dime into $100. I've seen it. They're fighting for survival.
Yes.
That's the other thing. I think conventional philanthropy people are so money pinching with like,
Oh my
well,
God.
are they spending it well? And I'm like, well, nobody's going to spend better than someone whose own self-interest is at stake here. It's like when you're giving money to frontline communities, like they're the people who are most impacted.
Yes.
Like, they're the ones that care. It's their project. They're trying to execute it. Like, let them do their thing.
Let them do their thing and level
don't.
up on that funding, because that kind of making a dollar out of 15 cents is part of what needs to change. And I feel like traditional philanthropy kind of keeps groups in that pigeonhole. And it's like, no, let's double down, let's level up and actually give the resources that's needed to do the work. Because I always think about, imagine if we can scale those community-based resources. When you're looking at philanthropy, less than 2% of money goes to climate work. And these are billions of dollars that's like in the ether. And a fraction of that 2% goes to the communities most impacted.
Because you're obviously running in circles where people have money, and so you can fundraise in that way. And so how do you?
It's
well,
so hard.
in theory,
It's
right?
so hard.
But so how do you convince people to give to frontline communities that are actually facing the worst effects of climate change, who are actually struggling day to day?
What we found, and what's worked best for me, is to use my platform to get the people who we need to hear from in front of the camera. And that's been probably the most successful thing in my advocacy.
And thank you for it, because you do it exceptionally well.
Thank
I know
you.
you probably
Thank
are
you.
the most outspoken environmental advocate in all of
That's so
in
sad.
all of entertainment. Why is it that you've been willing to go there while so many other people, in Hollywood or entertainment, whatever, who probably share somewhat similar views, aren't necessarily willing to express them publicly?
I'll tell you what's been so informative to me has actually been being on the front line. Being at the very edge of these protests, whether it's going and lobbying in Albany to stop the fracking in New York State, or going to rallies, or ending up at Standing Rock with my brothers and sisters, my indigenous brothers and sisters who I met during my time on the front lines of the fracking fight in New York State. And I'm developing these relationships, and not only that, I'm developing, experience with these people and seeing what they're fighting for, right? So, like I feel like I have a foot solidly in that.
Totally.
Like that's irrefutable. No one could take that from me. You can say what you want about it, but I was there, and so I get a lot of inspiration. Plus, I know them. These are like my extended family now. Like I can't let this stuff happen to them and still be the human being that I want to say to the world that I am, And so, I mean, I would invite anyone to get to be in the mix of it, instead of just being on the outside of it and lending your name occasionally.
Do you think that's the key ingredient that kind of got you so deeply into advocacy, is the fact that you actually showed up and did it and met these people and made relationships? I mean, is that why?
I'd say
You've gone places that other people haven't, basically?
I had in my heart
Yes.
a love for the nature.
Yes.
For nature. As a little boy, like I was telling you, I grew up in a forest. Like that was everything to me. And I saw Lake Michigan get cleaned up, in the 70s when literally the fish had cancerous growths on their faces. I'd see them kind of swimming sideways. And I saw in the span of 5 years, that literally changed and the water become clean and the fish become healthy again. I saw it happen. Like we can do this, And so that was my ethos, And so when I heard the call and I saw it happening, and it's in my heart to have this relationship to the world and nature and people, that also informs it.
And I just want to underscore that, because that when I'm listening to you, and I know it's hard for us to like talk about ourselves, but like Mark is exceptional. And when you asked about courage, like we were just talking about this the other day, was that Monday? Where the word courage is actually a Latin word that means heart. And so you've been saying that throughout, and you asked about courage. And that's really like Mark is filled with so much love and heart. And I feel like that is like that courage, that's where the courage comes from, is that heart and that love. And it helps him to go in untraditional and unusual spaces.
Yeah, against the grain.
Yeah. You know, and do that gritty, hard work unapologetically.
So how do you cultivate that kind of courage in others? I mean, how do you build the movement, build the coalition? Like, how do you get your peers involved? Maybe not to the same degree because you've taken it quite far, but at least, at least showing up for
First of all, this is a symbiotic thing. I get a lot of my courage from her and leadership and guidance.
Well, that is, surrounding yourself by people who inspire you. That certainly goes a long way.
Yes, and she's the real, like, she holds me to account too. Like I know she'll do that. I'm seeing more people onboarding now. I'm seeing people who are making some big steps out to the world in really like dangerous ways and courageous ways that I'd never seen before. And people are more willing to do that now. And I think that comes from just modeling it, I'm still here. Hey guys, I've been out there, I've been taking some hits. I've done some, in some controversial things, but I'm still here. My career's still happening. I'm a better actor and artist for it. I promise you. It's safe.
I know. It seems like your career's been doing quite well. like maybe actually that's how you rally people to the cause, is because your career's been on the up and up. So, obviously it goes hand in hand with advocacy.
I totally agree. Because the people see it. It's not just you as an actor, it's also you become like, you have an iconoclastic place in the culture. They're looking at your whole life now. Look at us. People use Twitter for just telling people like what they're eating, It's like, that's how into people's lives we are now, right? So they want to know like, also like, who are you? What do you believe in? Like, I'm following you. Are you someone worth following? Are you credible? There is that element.
That's interesting. Are you somebody worth following?
We're not asking you to show up and be the savior. We're saying, hey, there's an infrastructure of people already doing the work that exists. And, join us and be a part of that.
Yeah, that does feel less daunting. Yeah. When you join that larger coalition, you're like, I can be a member of the team for sure.
We couldn't have had this conversation with somebody like you 5 years ago.
Well, we were doing the same work.
You were doing the same thing.
But the coalition's
growing. It's like we're all coming together,
So when the film Free Solo came out in 2018 or whatever, I joked that was my deployment to Hollywood, because I did 6 months of like nonstop film events promoting the film, and it was crazy, and went to the Academy Awards, did the whole thing.
Yes.
But one of the things that I was struck by on the tour, well, one, it was such a grind, and I was like, for me as a one-off, like my once in a lifetime experience, I was like, this is amazing, what an opportunity, this is cool. But I was like, man, if I had to do this every year in and year, I was like, that is great so much. Like,
it's a grind.
I was like, I would never be an actor. It's the worst. But
listen, I do the acting I do for free. They pay me for that.
No, totally. No, that's exactly. Being a professional climber is the same way. You climb for the joy of it. You get paid by companies to show up to events and do make appearances and things like that. It's like, the acting's the joy. It's the work travel and the grind is. But so the thing I was struck by is, I was like, the thing, all the notoriety with the acclaim around it was kind of fine for me, because I put a lot of effort into the climb. I was proud of it. I was happy with it. But I was like, man, being an actor must be weird, because people freaking love you for a thing that you're pretending to do. And I was like, oh, it's got to be a little bit weird.
You actually
because because people like, and not speaking to any of your roles in particular, but like in general acting, it's like, oh, he's the guy that did that rad, and you're like, well, that's all
he's
fake,
actor,
right? Like, yeah, he's just a guy.
He wasn't really up on
and
not
only was he not up there, like it was another guy pretending to be up there. It wasn't even him pretending to be up there. It was like a stunt double, like pretending to do a thing. But so during the tour, I was sort of struck by like, it must be an interesting, contrast as a professional actor, where you're like, oh, people love you for a thing, but that's not even the thing that you're necessarily doing. But I feel like in some ways, you at least have bridged where it's like, oh, you are doing some real things in the real world, especially through the Solutions Project that has a real impact. And so Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I started the Hanel Foundation was because it's like, oh, if I'm going to get this public attention, it's nice to channel into something that actually matters.
Love
if
it.
people are going to do interviews, you might as well be talking about things that matter, like real issues that matter in the
Yeah,
world.
man.
And I'm sort of like, it feels like you have very much channeled a lot of that into something that matters as well.
Yeah.
Is that part of the appeal of something like this? Is just to funnel some of the spotlight onto something that matters?
And the good fortune, maybe I can use my good fortune for that as well.
And you do.
I love you.
Do you guys want to talk about the transition to renewables? I mean, that's part of the Solutions Project is 100% renewables for 100% of people. And that's obviously what we're doing at the Hanel Foundation, is supporting community solar. How did you guys arrive at renewables? Obviously anti-fracking, but talk about the passion for renewables.
That's where it really started was, okay, if we're going to stop this, then we have to have a credible thing to take it over. And, and that led us to what was a science. There wasn't much at that point. Mark Jacobson had done one model for, the United States, but it was very...
Yeah, his model of getting to 100% renewables.
Yeah, getting to 100%
renewables
using wind, water, and sun. And so I went to him and I said, hey, can you do New York State? And he said, I'm in the middle of my midterms. I don't think it's going to be possible. And like 3 days later, I had 20 pages, which would be the transition, program for New York State. And it was published in the New York Times. And it was a big deal. And then, so we said, let's start the Solutions Project. And that became a... That was before, so then you started working with Mark to actually found the Solutions Project? Yes. And that's when we all joined together. And out of that, and the intention of that was going to be, let's just do this organization that has a lifespan of only the time it takes for every country in the world to start adopting these plans. So Mark made, we were the clearinghouse for all of these plans, and he made one for every country in the world using Stanford's engineering class.
Isn't that going to take quite a long time? Like,
they did it in like...
No, I mean, the organization just to make the plans, you're saying?
Yes.
I thought you meant organization to help them all achieve.
Right.
No, it was to show, it was to make the way, and every country has adopted some version of this.
And that was the original Solutions Project.
Yeah, yes.
It was just to make the plans.
Yes, and then we were like, okay, and I was like, and that should be it. Let's not add another, there's so few dollars out there, let's not add another organization that needs to be funded when we're not going to do something that isn't like essential for this moment. And then at that point, we were like, well, once you do get these plans going, and I came from that frontline organizing, so that was imperative to me. If we're going to, how do we support a just transition? And that Gloria brought the vision of the trust transition to us. We didn't know where we were going. We knew we wanted to start helping these frontline organizations because they were the ones who were already doing it. They were, they were the ones who were already making the adaptations. That was already happening. People were already adopting solar on the front lines of New York State because we were trying to show our neighbors that we didn't need fracking. And we were inviting them over to see our solar projects and tell them how we were saving money, Totally. And so, then Gloria came in.
I mean, it's like, they had this great idea, right? And, we know that renewables and solar energy, like that's the future, despite people saying drill, baby, drill, or whatever. Like we know where things are going. And, often these great ideas happen and they overlooked the communities that need it most.
Yes.
And so the Solutions Project understood that we don't want to replicate that, but instead we actually want to center those communities and ensure that they are not only centered, but that we're actually investing in their leadership and their ideas and their solutions. Because to really make this thing work, the movement for renewables and solar energy, we have to democratize it. And the best way to democratize anything is like starting locally in communities with the people who are already doing the work, because they're going to be the ones to really create this surge of power, if you will, to make it real.
Actually, and similar is because I started in 2012, I think, so it's a similar time frame.
Okay.
And I felt like, and I was going to say, back then, it didn't seem obvious that the world was going to transition to renewables, and I felt like part of what we were doing at HF was like helping that transition happen. And now it seems, obviously it's happening, the transition's happening, and yet, as you just said, it's not clear that it will actually help people who need it the most.
Yep.
Because, and the thing is, it's still better to transition to 100% renewables and than not to.
Absolutely.
That said, if you leave all the same inequities in place, you're kind of like, have you really? Basically, it seems like you're wasting an opportunity that way.
Exactly.
And so, because I think about that, if utilities switch to 100% renewables, you're kind of like, okay, that's definitely better. That's the first step. But what about all the people that don't have access to power currently? It's not like they're getting power in those circumstances. And you're kind of like, yeah, no, I get fired up about the exact same things.
I love it, because back then, as you say, like renewables was inaccessible. It was niche. It was expensive. So, people couldn't afford it. And it was more of a privilege. And that's part of what the problem is with things.
But now it's the cheapest power by watt in the world.
Exactly.
You're kind of like,
exactly.
Like come a long way in 10 years.
It's amazing.
Yes, thanks to what we're all doing and what the communities on the front lines have been doing to amplify these solutions as accessible and doable.
What's beautiful about renewable energy is it's democratized. Anyone can harvest the energy and make their own energy. Whoever controls your energy controls your destiny. And if you can break free of that, which renewable energy does, this is why they're so afraid of it, is because it actually democratizes
That's
energy.
the thing I love about supporting renewables is that any community that goes renewable, you just know is never going back. And that's kind of the whole thing, is that's when you can really imagine changing a system.
And the community helps people feel that, right? And see it in real time, because they're like, okay, yes, this is solar energy, this is renewables. But when you have it happening in the streets and in our neighborhoods, it's more holistic too. So that's what I really appreciate about grassroots organizations on the ground. They're showing that, yeah, this is about renewable energy. This is about affordability. This is about making it accessible. This is also about jobs and training programs and apprenticeship opportunities and employing our communities to learn these skills and to get a good paying unionized jobs to do it, right? And to install this solar, in addition to making sure that like Mr. Graham's is saving on his energy bill, right? And he's able to share it with his neighbors so that he can get his whole block to get to do solar, right?
Can you guys talk about next steps for the Solutions Project? Like what comes next for you guys? I mean, obviously fundraising, trying to reach more communities, but how can people get involved and support the work, and what are you guys trying to achieve here?
I mean, just hit us up. It's really that easy. People can check us out. Our website is thesolutionsproject.org. Donating is always great, but we also, because we're trying to raise like right now $100 million, because essentially we want to re-grant to hundreds of most impacted communities across the country. And we want to change 100 million and influence 100 million hearts and minds so that they can understand that they can be a part of this energy transition too, this renewable energy transition. And then we also have a map on our website. Like if people want to be involved in some of the local organizations that we support, wherever you live, we probably have an organization that's right by you that you can actually go to and see these solutions in real time and join forces in your own neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like, Mark, you were saying that's basically how you got so passionate about this. I mean, joining an organization like that, but actually going, and because I had a similar experience when I started the Holland Foundation. One of the first organizations I supported was Grid Alternatives, if you've ever worked with them.
Totally.
Grid's amazing. But so I went to a few installs and, personally helped install solar panels and all that. And when you actually go and you meet the people who are benefiting from the projects, you just have so much more understanding of the projects. I mean, you just buy into it so much more. You're like, oh, this is so clearly the future.
Exactly. And you have ownership of it, and then you're able to speak to it from a personal perspective.
Where change really happens is locally. And that's where we really that's where we find community too. And we all are dying for community. Even when we're on our phones, we're just like really just want to
be people are on their phone for community.
We want to be in touch with people.
Yes.
But really, just showing up in these places is just, it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life, really.
Likewise.
So maybe just to wrap us up, I mean, Mark, you have such a tremendously large platform around this. What would you say to all the people who look up to you and sort of respect you for your professional work, like pretending.
Yeah.
And, but how would you draw them in?
I want to say that there's a gift that I think is important to say, is like, this time seems so intense. But I see life as there's a gift in every difficult moment. There's always an inherent gift somewhere hidden in there. And what you're seeing now in the United States is people coming out of their homes for each other. And it's all interconnected now. It's all about how do we want to move forward in the future. And so I would say to people, like, come out, get involved. It's a lot less scary being with groups of people than it is behind your phone. And I'm all for that too. But literally, I'm a testament to the fact that it's life fulfilling, it's gratifying, and it will give you the community that you're just so dying for, because you'll meet other people who are interested in the same things as you are. And other people who will open your mind and heart to other parts of the world and beliefs that you didn't even think existed or knew existed.
Ashe.
Mark, Gloria, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
No, that was great. Thank you.
We will include a link to the Solutions Project in the show notes. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.